Mhm. Or about Kevin's experience. I don't know how much we're talking about. Yeah, maybe about Kevin.
Yeah. Kevin's experience. Well,
Yeah.
and you were experiencing it.
That's right. Okay. Okay. I'll go with that.
Okay. Enough
Okay.
of my babbling. Thank you, Kevin. Take
Okay. Thank you, Laurel. Thank you. Well, I think the way I'd like to start is just to maybe I'll read a Facebook post I made about the talk. I included in that some things that were not in the Adam newsletter, and it really covers well what I could speak about. And then I'd be interested to hear from anybody who came specifically to hear me speak about the topic listed, what you'd like to know about, because there are a lot of things that I could talk about relative to the experience. And so.
Does it need to be using the microphone, David?
Oh, I forgot about the microphone.
But
can everybody hear me? Okay. I'll try and speak loud, and if you can't, let me know. So I wrote as a Facebook post, I've just returned from a trip to North Carolina where I participated in 2 psilocybin ceremonies with a church there that uses psilocybin as a sacrament. I was deeply touched by the experience, the authenticity, heart connection, and generosity of the people in the community, the lack of ego, the beauty of the ceremony, the music for the ceremony, 5 hours of live music, the care and preparation that preceded the ceremonies, the insights, teachings, and heart opening that I experienced in my journeys, and the things that I heard from various people in the community during the week that I was there about the ways in which being part of the community and these ceremonies has changed their lives. In conversation here and on Facebook, I have not infrequently mentioned Charles Eisenstein's book, The More Beautiful World Our Hearts Know Is Possible, to describe the world many of us dream of and live for as a future possibility. As I was eating dinner with the community after the second ceremony, there was a beautiful feeling of reverie and gratitude, easy conversation or silence, and I found myself gazing at people across the table from me like a small child, just for the enjoyment of looking at them, but without any need to say anything or have a reason to look at them or make facial expressions or perform or be funny or be smart or any of that. I looked into people's eyes and then back to my food or wherever else my eyes wanted to go without needing to say anything. I don't think I've looked at people that way since I was a small child. And in that moment, what I felt was the more beautiful world is already here. It's being born right now in places like this, in places where people are dropping from their head intelligence and all the ways our minds will create artifices to make us look important or smart or to be accepted, to be better than others, to be right, to be defended, to create hierarchies and status and separation and disconnection, which are innocent and blameless attempts to be safe, to be accepted, to drop from their minds and down to their hearts, people really living from their heart's desire for connection, authenticity, and intimacy with each other and all of life, and moving in the world and day-to-day life from that place, actually moving from a place of caring for others as if others were oneself. And I'll just put in parentheses because that's what I saw in my journey as others are oneself. And that was an experiential thing, not a mental concept. I was invited to give a talk at Adams Center this Sunday about anything I wanted, and I think I will talk about my experience in North Carolina. The talk is titled, The More Beautiful World Is Already Here. A number of people expressed interest in my Facebook share last fall about doing 2 facilitated psilocybin journeys in Ashland, Oregon, where psilocybin is now legal. Those were solo journeys. The North Carolina experience was a group experience in a ceremonial setting, which can be a very different kind of experience. And for those who are interested, this would be an opportunity to hear about that. While there's an extraordinary level of chaos, fear, and collapse of human systems and ecology happening in the world right now, there's also something beautiful growing. Out of decay grows new life. And in my experience, this starts in one's own heart. I feel this happening. Oh, too soft?
Well, you're speaking to that.
Okay, thank you. Too soft and too low? Okay, okay. Do I need to go back a little, or is everything okay? Okay.
To the back of the room.
Okay. So I feel this happening across the world at the grassroots in communities like the one I visited in North Carolina, but also in other kinds of communities where people understand that all of life is intelligent and deeply interconnected and equal in value. And there's a hunger to awaken out of the dream of separation and superiority, mental calculation and force, and learning to listen more deeply to each other and to all forms of life, and to the intelligence of our own hearts, to be collaborators. In my experience, the heart is a place of innocence, non-judgment, openness, curiosity, and a deep wish that all people be well and happy. Psychedelics are not the right path for everyone. There are many paths. I see the gleam of this same light coming from communities oriented towards indigenous understandings, animal and interspecies communication, solutions journalism, post-materialism science, post-capitalism science, centers of consciousness studies, integral studies, traditional faith, regenerative farming, and others. And in the most well-functioning of these communities, there is a humble understanding that we are not perfect in our efforts to create something more kind or equitable or supportive or sustainable. Our efforts may not be perfect, but when there is injury, we seek communication and repair rather than the old world commitment to being right and creating more separation. I love something I heard Eve Ensler say in an interview. You don't make the world a better place by fighting with the old system. You make the world a better place by creating something more beautiful, something that people want to be a part of. So that's my that's my introduction to my talk. So psilocybin, okay, that's a great first question. Psilocybin is a psychoactive ingredient in magic mushrooms, in psychedelic mushrooms. And yeah, and so I'm just kind of curious if anybody has any burning questions, I'll address those. Otherwise, I'll just ramble as I'm inclined. So I'll go around and give everybody a chance to say something or ask something, and you can pass if you want, and then I'll try and answer those in the course of the. We start with Dawn. Do you?
Yeah, where do you buy them?
Oh, okay. Well, maybe I should just answer the question. We'll go around and I'll answer questions one at a time, and then I'll ramble after that.
Are they legal?
Well, okay, so psilocybin is legal in Oregon and Colorado, and
But not Alaska.
not Alaska yet, but it's there's a ballot initiative to legalize it that'll be on, I'm not sure if it's be on the next ballot or the one after that. And in Anchorage, there's a wonderful conference usually in August or September by the Alaska Ethneogenic Society to bring awareness to the potentials of psychedelics. Psychedelics have been designated by the, like psilocybin and MDMA, which are two psychoactive substances, have been designated as breakthrough medicines by the FDA. They're double the efficacy of the next best thing, which is for treatment of PTSD, anxiety, depression, end-of-life situations. The next best thing is antidepressants, which have about a 30% efficacy, which is the same as placebo. Um,
Really?
yeah, in a
I didn't know that.
in a study with using MDMA and people who had severe PTSD, treatment-resistant PTSD, that means they've gone through lots of treatments and never recovered. After one single MDMA journey, 67% of the people no longer qualified for a diagnosis of PTSD.
Wow.
If you want to get a big broader view of the psychedelic, both the therapeutic healing scene and the spiritual scene, you could watch Michael Pollan's documentary How to Change Your Mind. It's on Netflix, and he's also written a book by the same name. So because of the war on drugs, the vast majority of Americans are still frightened of drugs. They still think that LSD is going to make you jump out of a window. And the danger there, like I said, psychedelics are not for everyone. And there is a thoughtful screening process that's appropriate to decide if they're if they're a good fit for you. But this whole idea in the 60s, it was Richard Nixon who scheduled them substance 1, dangerous substances that have no redeeming value or social use. And at the time, psychotherapists and people who'd started using psychoactive substances in therapy knew this was not true. It was a breakthrough medicine. People with severe psychosis were recovering from psychosis through a single LSD journey, LSD trip, facilitated by somebody who knew how to hold the space and be with them and help them go through the whatever difficult situations they might have been dealing with. And to understand psychedelics a little bit more, they're called non-specific amplifiers, which means that they take whatever material you're working with personally that's unique to you and bring it out in a way that can clarify it, that you can work with it. Sometimes that's very difficult. Sometimes it's facing things that are painful to know about yourself or to acknowledge, ways maybe that you pretend or you interact in the world that are not functional. Psychedelics can show you these things, and then psychedelics can also show you this more beautiful world that our hearts know is possible. It can show you the interconnection of things. It can show you that animals and plants are intelligent. I'll just share some of the people in the community that I visited. One was an elderly gentleman whose wife had died about a year before, and he said, I was devastated. It was really the end of my life when she died. And he thought it was the end of his life. I don't know if he thought of suicide but it was a huge crisis for him. And he heard about psychedelics and their healing potentials, and he went to another community in the area. There are communities popping up all over North Carolina and Colorado where psilocybin and other substances like this are legal, but also in places where they're not legal yet, and they're popping up under the auspices of churches where it's where, like the community that I visited, claims the right to practice, to use these mushrooms as sacraments under the Religious Freedom Act. And so he went to a community that was taking people journeying with ayahuasca, which is a South American ethneogen that's been used by indigenous people there for healing, for spiritual growth, and so forth for a millennium. And he did a journey, and in that journey, he said he saw that it was his wife's time to go, and he understood everything about her transition and why it needed to happen. And at the time I spoke with him, he was clearly perfectly at peace, a happy man. Not his life wasn't over anymore because his wife had gone, and perhaps he still felt his presence or communications from her. I didn't go into that with him, but I haven't seen and then so after that, he said there was still a question for him. His whole life had been, about her and about his work, and he was retired now, and he didn't have her, and his question was, do I have any reason to live? Is there any purpose for my life? He was living in a retirement home where people were all believing the cultural bullshit about we just get old and sick and we die and we get tottery and we can't think anymore and we don't have a life anymore, as we get older. He was living in that kind of a place where people had just accepted that and they believed that. And so he did a psilocybin journey, a mushroom journey with the community that I visited. And he said in that journey, that's the question he brought, that's the intention. When you bring an intention to a journey, like his intention in going to the ayahuasca journey was to work with his grief over the loss of his wife, to see what way he could still go on. And then in this second journey, his question was, do I have a reason to live? And the journey told him, yes, you have a reason to live. Stop hanging out with those people who think they're going to die. Start hanging out with younger people. Live a life like you're a young person. And that's how he felt. That's how he manifested in the world, when I met him. So that's the kind of thing people take into these ceremonies, the kind of life questions, the kind of challenges. I stayed with a host family there who put me up for free. So this is an important thing. There's a man. Does anybody know who Rick Doblin is? Okay, so so in the 60s, he was a young therapist who had experienced that psychedelics could help people heal profoundly from internal distress and profoundly help their spiritual development. And he had started working in that therapeutic context with people in psychedelics. And then Richard Nixon came along and declared all those drugs illegal, which later his associates said was an attempt to stop the young people from protesting the war in Vietnam and also to have excuses to arrest Black Panthers and other people who were a threat to the established order. That's why drugs were made illegal, and that's why this whole propaganda thing started to frighten people about what drugs will do to you, and if there was somebody who used them inappropriately and had a bad outcome, that made the front page headlines. So people thought that that's what every drug journey entailed. You remember the story of Art Linkletter's daughter jumping out a window. Many people remember that from that time. So there was this whole fear campaign, and people are still living with those beliefs now. And miraculously, so back at the time he made those drugs illegal, this young guy named Rick Doblin made it his life's commitment to prove that they were therapeutic and to legalize them again. He went to Harvard. I don't know if it was medical school or one of the schools at Harvard to learn how to usher psychoactive substances through the FDA approval process. And that is a big deal. It's taken him 30 years and $50 million in raised money to take psilocybin and MDMA through phase 1, phase 2, and phase 3 FDA trials. And it's all through the efforts of this magnificent human being that now there's really solid scientific evidence that these are more effective than anything that we have, anything that the pharmaceutical companies are selling for treatment of really serious things that are widespread. Anxiety and depression, is what do they call it? Epidemic in the world. So it's thanks to him that there's scientific evidence now. And in spite of that, because of all the financial interests, the approval of MDMA and psilocybin have been delayed and delayed and delayed. But for some reason, the media, which usually promotes whatever the pharmaceuticals companies are selling, for some reason the media has given airtime to the psychedelics and how profoundly helpful they are to people. And people are starting to find out that what they've been told for years and years and years about psychedelics is untrue. And so they're available now, but the cost is, because they went through FDA trials, and because legalization in Oregon and Colorado has this whole bureaucratic framework attached, so it becomes very expensive for people to do therapy using psychedelics. It's too expensive for most people. And for many of the people who need it most, it's too expensive. I went to Oregon, where it's legal now, and did a facilitated journey in a legal setting on Thanksgiving, and that cost almost $6,000. This was for 2 journeys. Now, the beauty of the churches that are organizing and the communities that are organizing, this one, for example, part of their charter is to make the medicines available to anybody, regardless of their ability to pay. So I went for 2 journeys in North Carolina, and they cost, the price, they said the suggested donation was $1,350 compared to $6,000. And that included staying in the home of people in the community. It included food for the weekend of the ceremonies. It included a visit with a nurse practitioner before the ceremonies to talk about my dosage, how much I would take, what medications I might or might not be on. So a very careful screening to see that I was a suitable person to do this, that I hadn't been suicidal in the last 6 months and was still unstable. That kind of things. So a really beautiful process of vetting and making sure that people have correct expectations. And so there were people at the ceremony who didn't pay anything because, as I understand it, who paid either little or nothing because that was what they could afford. And the person whose idea the community was, who started the community, I talked with him for a while yesterday just to learn more about how the community is structured and how it began. And he said that they usually break even on ceremonies. Some people pay more than the suggested donation. Some people pay the suggested, and some people pay less than. But the most important thing feels like, with this profound healing substance and all the people that could benefit from it, that there be ways that people have access without having to be rich, basically. And so this community makes that possible. So I went off on a long, long answer to Don's question there.
Very interesting.
Yeah, so you can ask me anything, and I could go off on a long answer probably, yeah.
What was your dosage on your trips?
So I did about a gram, and then, about a gram. The first journey, I think it was maybe a gram or a gram and a half. I'm not sure, which is considered it's considered a very activating dosage, but not what they call a heroic dosage. So in our world, bigger's better. The bigger, the more, the better. But it's not how things work in the world of internal development. people think, oh, if you take more psychedelics, you're going to get more benefit. And so they have what are called heroic doses. And it could become an ego thing for a person to talk about how they took a heroic dose of, even the term, a heroic dose of LSD means they took this super big amount that gave them this super intense experience. And I knew that those dosages were not good for my nervous system. I had a 2.5, a 2.5 gram dose in Oregon. It was too much for my system. And I just sat there the whole journey kind of going, this is hard, to the person who was facilitating, and really just struggling to stay in my body and connected. And so for the second journey, and the beautiful thing is that when you work with someone who's experienced with the substances, they tend to have really wise advice and good advice. And she had already told me in preparation for the ceremony, she said, more is not better and less might be better. You might get more from less. So the second journey, 2.5, the reason I did that was that that's what somebody designated as a standard therapeutic dose. And I had paid so much and I had so much invested in this, I didn't want to get the half experience, I wanted to get the full experience. And so,
How many hours did it take to wear off? 2.5 grams.
oh, it was, for me, actually the journey was about 8 hours, and then I was still feeling it on into the evening. All the way into the evening, I was in kind of a reverie. For me, psilocybin has a very gentle come down. It's so beautiful. It's like the softest landing, but you're still in the reverie of whatever you've been shown or you've seen during the journey. So,
Makes you awake and time gets really long.
pardon me.
Very awake and time gets really long.
Yeah, you know, one
Repeat
thing
what
that
she
happens
said,
for,
please.
pardon?
Repeat what she said so.
Oh, okay. She said, does time expand? Does it get very long? And yes, that can really happen. In other words, time can slow down completely. And this is so beautiful because that's how things can be when we're children, when we're in this state where we're not lost in our heads, we're not sped up by the modern world, and everything has to be done fast, and everything has to be fast, and movies have to have things coming fast. And so when you slow down, you see the world like a dragonfly. A dragonfly has 5 eyes and 30,000 lenses, and it sees the world in slow motion. It sees every beautiful nuance of everything that happens. And in a mushroom journey can be like that. But I would say also it can take us into a different reality where there really is no time. There's no sense of time. Yeah. So just back to dosage, the second journey I took a gram to start out with because I wanted to be conservative, and then very often in a ceremony they'll come around after an hour and offer you a booster if you haven't got quite enough, and I took a half gram booster, and that really took me into a place that was just so amazing. I can't even really say, like a lot of teachings I would say came to me. Indigenous understandings of our interconnectivity with all of life and how all of life is alive. It's intelligent. We're foolish to think that we're the only intelligent life on the planet, or that we're even very smart, because we've almost destroyed the planet. And the rest of the, there are plants and animals that have been here since the beginning who are much wiser than we are. And for humankind to survive, we need to hear what they have to say. That was one learning, but there were also many other teachings that came about my own tendency. I'll just share one. My tendency to start creating a story about who I am and start trying to act like that person that I think that I am, and project an image of who I think I am to other people so other people will like me or accept me. And it's a very innocent thing that we all do from children when we realize we're not accepted as we are, and we have to start projecting images to get safety or to be we have to start acting in certain ways that are not true to us in order to be safe in the world. That's what people seem to want from us. And so part of my journey was to see that this happens for me, and that I have been shown the way back to my heart, which is that childlike place of purity. It's pure innocence. It's a place of not knowing. It's a place of not judging other people. It's a place of being curious. And from that place, that's the place that I experienced the whole community being in after these ceremonies, was this very heart-connected place where that's why I could gaze into people's eyes and not have to say anything, not have to perform, not have to, all the things that I might do otherwise. And the journey showed me, just remember that tight connection to your heart, and remember that you can get into your head, you can get lost off and start trying to create this heroic Kevin that you want everybody to admire, but that's the path of suffering. That's caused you a lot of suffering in your life. And so just keep coming, just stay tightly connected to your heart. And it showed me a lot of other things, but so that's my long answer to the question about dosage. Okay, so yeah.
So I was wondering where the psilocybin was sourced from in North Carolina.
Oh, that's a great question.
Yeah, and also while you're going through all of this, because you're saying that these things happen to you and you're learning these things, while it's happening, are you writing them down, or do you just remembered everything after
Oh,
the hour?
yeah. After the journey, right towards the end of the journey, when I was in that reverie state, so there was this music, live music being played by a group called the New Leaf Collective, a group of women, and there was a man also there who was not part of the group, but he was with them as a musician. And so the lyrics of the music were so evocative in this state of heart openness that they touched me as like some of the deepest wisdom I'd ever heard. And I was in a state where it was easy to pick up my notebook and just write down a lyric so that I would remember it later. So I did that 3 or 4 different times. And then after the journeys, I wrote about, in this little notebook, about 12 pages handwritten, because they say handwritten has more connectivity to your brain than typing something out on a computer. And I wanted this stuff to be in my body. About 12 pages about the most beautiful and amazing parts of the experience is all written here. And a lot of it, if I just remember the phrase of the music that I heard, that would be a whole page writing what came to me as I heard that lyric, and how I could feel that and perceive that in my life. For example, in the journey, when I said I, what I felt I as was everything. It was not just this person. It was all these people. It was all the planet. It was, like people describe in awakenings or consciousness awakenings of fundamentally we are the same consciousness. Well, I had heard that mentally, but it never really was something that I felt in my body. And I like the idea. I like the idea that, that we're all connected. But that's something I felt in my body in this journey in a real way. And, people call it an altered state of reality, but actually we live in an altered state of reality. In a capitalist society where people compete and they push and they shove and they extract and their relations are transactional, just what they can get out of people. That's an altered reality. This reality is a reality that we could learn from, and so that might be a good point for me to play one song that was played in the ceremony, or a little bit of it, so you can get a taste of the music and how deeply spiritual it is. If some of us know that much of the great music of the '60s that revolutionized and galvanized young people against the war in Vietnam and against all the extractive bullshit that was happening in the capitalist world and the conformity, that came out of psychedelics. The Beatles used LSD and other psychedelics, and other people who were creating music at that time did also. And also the whole revolution of computing. Steve Jobs used psychedelics and talked about if you had a wish for people, that it be everybody have the opportunity to experience a psychedelic once in their life. But here's here's one of the songs that like touched me so deeply. And in the ceremony, you may find yourself crying. You may find yourself laughing. During the whole first ceremony that I did, the whole first day, I was shaking. My body was shaking, and what it meant to me is there's so much fear in my body, and it's been wanting to shake for so long. I've gone through my whole life pretending I'm not afraid of anything. I'm just holding the fear down, holding it down. Every time I'm frightened, I act not frightened, and all that's held in my body. And all my body wanted to do was just shake for the whole first day. That was 5 hours of shaking. And people asked me at the end if other people observed. They asked me if I was tired, and I was like, I'm not tired at all. That was energy moving. There was no muscular thing happening. It was energy moving through me. And the second day, my body wanted to shake too, but I suppressed it because sometimes the shaking can take you out of the heart space where you're really connecting with the medicine. And I really wanted to connect with what the medicine would amplify. And I had such a rich experience the second day. I didn't shake at all, but I got all these teachings. So I was really grateful that I did that. And so here's one of the songs that came on as I was kind of in the reverie space that the musicians played. You might enjoy closing your eyes and just imagining yourself in a ceremonial space, lying on the ground on your back, or however you want to be, in the company of other people who are doing the same thing. And everyone is having their own separate journey into what they need to discover in their own lives for themselves. And they're sharing the space where they do that. The music was all like that. It was so good. You just can't imagine anybody could have written it. They must have gotten help from the plant teachers, from the mushrooms. Yeah. Uh-huh.
So when you talk about psychedelics, like peyote, ayahuasca, cacao, LSD, all included in that?
Yeah, it's a broad term that people use for all those things, and there are distinctions. Like MDMA, which is it's a substance that doesn't come from a plant. It was synthesized in a lab, but it's a very profound heart opener and healer that was discovered by around the same time LSD was discovered, and that one is not really psychoactive. You don't see things. It's very much what people who make the fine distinctions call it as empathogen. Empathogen, it opens your heart, and it's something that's very effective. I trained with a guy who's been using MDMA underground. He's a psychotherapist who also in the 60s, he wrote his thesis on MDMA and its value in therapy, and then it was made illegal. So he went underground. He's guided hundreds of people through journeys, and he's written a whole book on how, or not a whole book, a chapter in a book on how effective it is for couples counseling. Because in a single journey, couples can often talk about difficult things that they haven't been able to talk about in their whole marriage. And they have the space and the open heart to hear each other. And in difficult or challenging relationships, what happens is sometimes people find that they want to go their different ways, but there's a feeling of affection when they do that, as opposed to hatred or bitterness, appreciation for what they got out of the relationship. Or couples might rekindle the reason that they got into the relationship, or they might work out a difficult issue in the relationship. So psychedelics is just a broad term to cover, many, many different kinds of substances. Yeah. Devil's Club root? I don't. There's a woman in the Matanuska Valley who comes to the psychedelic conference here, who works with the mushrooms Amanita muscaria, and she synthesizes that into a substance that people can take. Oh, she did. Okay, yeah.
Gabrielle Bird.
Right, right. And then I think she actually got her medicine from a Russian woman who lives in California. She got her understanding of Amanita from this woman who I also met at the conference last year. This was the one, she's a doctor, and she's the one who kind of basically worked with it and experimented it to discover its potentials. So she's kind of a pioneer of that medicine. She's written a book on Amanita and its uses.
When you're journaling, use cursive writing because it's tied directly into your subconscious mind.
That's
Printing is not necessarily that way.
That's exactly right. Yeah, yeah. That's what I've read, and it feels good to me to do it that way. Yeah. Yeah.
In hypnosis, you kind of journey also.
Mm-hmm.
A form of, and then generally with somebody going into hypnosis, they don't do recreational hypnosis. They do it because there's an intentional purpose here. And so that was what I was going to ask about this too, Kevin. Intentional use of psychedelics versus recreational. There are people that just like anything with marijuana or whatever, they just do it for recreation.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe always like to stay on that plane.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
But how important is intention to the whole process of therapeutic? I mean, it sounds like it's pretty important.
Yeah, if you're really working with something, intention is everything. If you're just young and you're curious and you're experimental and you're recreational, I don't have a judgment against that. My first experience with psychedelics was when I was river guiding in my early 30s. I did a Grand Canyon trip down the Colorado through the Grand Canyon with a group of river guides. And somebody brought along psilocybin mushrooms and in Havasu Canyon handed them out. And that was my first experience with them. And so you could call that recreational. I didn't know at that time that I had any problems. The really powerful and devastating memories of early trauma that I had later hadn't come yet. And I was just a young kid discovering the world and the wonder of the world. And so we took mushrooms and walked up this most amazing canyon and spent the day just, and I've done it another time in the Grand Canyon. And I've done it actually in the Chugach Mountains. It amplifies for me the experience of nature so that you're experiencing it like you would have as a child. It's just, you see everything. The colors are more vivid. You really see things. You really feel things. you're really just agog with wonder, at the world, the beauty of the world, the movement of water down the stream, and so forth. Things that we're too sped up to feel or notice, as we get older. So,
Do you want to show the projector?
I could. It's not super important. I have a few pictures of the retreat center where we did it, and some of the art in the home of the person that I stayed with that was really touching to me, and nothing super important. Yeah, about 15 pictures or something. So if I'll answer questions, or I'll show that if that's of interest to somebody, or we'll get there.
Have you done any experimenting or any stuff with meditation or hypnosis before?
Oh, I'd done 30 years of, when the trauma memories came back, it completely destabilized my life. I was suicidal for a week. I was in so much pain, and I didn't know where the pain was coming from, and I just felt like I couldn't bear the pain. It was the first time I'd thought of suicide, and I just felt like I couldn't bear the pain. And so that turned my whole life around, and I knew I was able to make it through that experience, but I knew basically I had to run from the feelings because it was too much, and I had to keep my mind every moment on the present, the feeling of my feet hitting the ground, and I was frightened to even think about that terrible week for 2 years. It took me 2 years to stabilize, and then I knew I had to understand what happened, or I couldn't live a life like other people do. I couldn't believe that I was stable enough to have a family or anything. And so I had done 30 years of all kinds of therapeutic work, spiritual searching, and I would say after that, I'll call that experience, they talk about bad trips, and there's people who go through difficult trips in the course of doing this work. And what I feel like is I've already had the worst trip you could have, and it wasn't on psychedelics, and it's taken me 30 years to integrate it. So I feel like I've already paid my dues in terms of bad trips. I deserve only good trips now. But I've done a lot of meditation, and meditation was not a positive thing for me. It was isolating. It was kind of self-abnegating. I don't know what the term is. It was this body wants to move, and it wants to play. It wants to be childlike. It doesn't want to be sitting there following a discipline of following the breath coming into my nose. That was not, at other stages in my life, that might have felt better, but I did a lot of, about 6 years after that terrible experience, or that really difficult experience, my therapeutic work took me into a really profound heart awakening, I would say. And I experienced many of the same things that were reiterated to me in the teachings that came to me on the mushroom journey. Like in this heart opening, it was the most profound experience of my life, and I was in a state, I would say, of really lucid presence and feeling of being connected from my heart center with what I would call the infinite well of all love and all joy. For 3 months I was in that state, and then another wave of trauma memories hit me, and I was blown out of that state and back into this really desperate search to have felt what that state is, and then go back to where you were before is like a fall from heaven to hell. So I spent 10 years in a state of deep depression, just trying to deal with the loss of that sense, that profound well-being. And so, I had lots of experience trying, so many things, prior to the mushrooms.
Could you talk about, in your most recent journey, was there any reference to the past trauma, or in reading of it, or any? Yeah,
actually, in the Oregon journeys that I did, you know, what I found is that when I initially started doing psychedelics therapeutically, they would take me deep into the trauma, into the feeling of the trauma, and to the awareness that it's not just my trauma. I'm carrying the burden of my parents, my grandparents, and all this historical trauma. I have a very traumatized family in my family line, and that's all in my nervous system and in my DNA. So in the Oregon journeys, I um, I went in the journey. I went into the feeling of how much suffering I've been through, just an immense amount of suffering. And the question that came up for me is, why would anybody take birth in this place? There's so much suffering here. And it was just a question I was living in during this journey. And there was music during the journey. It was recorded music, and it was almost like the music spoke to me. It was almost like it was a language to me. And the music had kind of a flowing, lilting. I could even play the piece that was playing for me. I'll play it for you because this will be interesting, and I'll tell you the message that I got. Oh, I'm about done?
It's showing red.
Oh, okay. Oh, my talk's about over. Okay. Oh, the phone battery. Okay, how am I doing on time, just so I'm aware of that?
We're usually between and 4:15 to 4:30.
Okay,
So
okay, so we're pretty good.
Do you want to close your computer to?
Oh, okay, that's what's showing red?
The phone battery on the screen.
Oh, it's showing red. It's not showing red here, so I guess I'm okay. It could be, I wonder if it's not my computer battery, because my computer battery could be showing red. I'll close my computer for now. So,
But you're going to play that.
yeah, so, yeah, because, I mean, this is kind of interesting. This is the kind of thing I'd want to hear if I had come to hear a talk like this today. Not that everybody will, but, so music can be a really important part of a ceremony. Well, it is integral, actually, because it's felt. And probably the greatest healing that people need in these times is to drop down from this head thing that's going on and down into into the feeling of their bodies, the feeling of their hearts, and all the things that feeling can tell us, can teach us and can heal and so forth. And so, let's see. So I was in this state of just feeling how much suffering there is in this world, you know, not just in my life, but think of all the suffering in the world, and why would anybody take birth here? And this song happened to come on the playlist, and it was just like, kind of, we're journeying through the world. We're journeying through the world. That's what it said to me. And there's so much suffering. And there's this heavy weight that we're carrying through the world. It's so much suffering. But there's kind of also this lilt to the music, kind of a dance almost. And maybe the best you can do in this world of so much suffering, maybe what a courageous heart does, is to dance a little bit, to smile a little bit, to make the suffering lighter, and so forth. And so that was the first part of my journey, is just feeling, and that gave me some life force, because I had just felt like, oh, so much suffering. And but there's a way that we can mitigate that suffering. And then later in the journey, what came to me is the memory of my mother trying to abort me. And I had already had this memory come back previously. It wasn't new to the journey, but what the journey was saying, the story of her trying to abort me is, to shorten it, I had fought back. The doctor stuck a wooden spoon up her vagina and tried to scrape me out, and the memory is of my head being pulled backwards. and me fighting back and saying, "You can't do this to me. You don't know who I am." And anyway, that memory came back in the mushroom journey, and what it said is, yeah, there's all this suffering, but you wanted to be here. And it didn't tell me why I wanted to be here. It just said, you wanted to be here. So, so anyway, and then other things have come in since then. Actually, the reason I wanted to be here came in a therapeutic session later. Something that felt like, oh, that's why I wanted to be here, came to me. So it comes in different pieces, but the suffering, the psychedelics can really take you into your trauma. It can take you into contact with people that you love that have passed. All kinds of things.
So Kevin, and to have, you mentioned a facilitator that's there with you, and so how important is that to have someone to be there with you as you journey through this versus trying it on your own? Is it
it's
experienced at it, or like would you experience it on your own now, or?
Well, I experienced it on my own before I ever did it with a facilitator because of my experience doing it out in nature. I had done it. But the difference, and that's a really good question, because the difference in these ceremonies is you're not out in nature, you're lying down with an eye mask on. So it really invites you to go inside instead of going out. And going inside for most people is more difficult than going out. And so a facilitator can be a real blessing. And so when I had a facilitator is when, it was Oregon was the first time, and that's where I started learning how to go in, really. And if you did it on your own, that might be the outcome for you. Everybody would be different. You could do it on your own. You might get more value from somebody who's really experienced. The facilitator asked me really good questions, and that really woke up important parts of my learning and understanding during, in the journeys in Ashland, I would start telling stories, lots of stories of my life. And at one point she asked me, why are you telling these stories? And it was not in a way like you shouldn't be telling the stories, but she was asking, are you in contact with the mushrooms? Or are you, to me, what I heard was, are you maybe lost in a story? And then in self-reflection, I had to ask myself, why am I telling these stories? Is it to impress her? Or is it to understand what happened myself or whatever? But my journeys became quieter, with the kind of the insight that I got from the questions that she asked. Yeah.
You having been a facilitator or a speaker here for quite a few years at Adam, I can tell you just from my observation with you now, that innocence of that little boy is much more evident in you.
Yeah.
Like that. Because you've always been very wanting to play and dance and sing and all these things.
Right.
So anyway, I'm noticing that it's
I hope that little boy just explodes completely out. So he's not hidden anymore. He's been kind of hidden for a long time. Yeah, thank you. Thanks for that reflection. Oh, yeah, several people ask, where do you get mushrooms? Well, this community has somebody in the community that grows them for the community. And there's many different strains of mushroom, and they're all very different. So they're like personalities or something like that. And so, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Would or could you facilitate a psychedelic journey?
Could I facilitate one?
Would or
Could
could you?
I?
I was going to
Well,
ask that same question within Adam. Have
okay.
the event.
Well,
Be a safe place.
I have done a training to facilitate MDMA journeys, and I have done that. That was a training with this guy who's been doing it for 30 years, and So I am trained to do that, and I've been accepted into a program to become a licensed psychedelic facilitator in Oregon and Colorado that starts in the fall. So I'll have more experience, as I go through that program. Yeah.
So, what is your take on suffering now after you've been?
Oh, it's such a good question. um, well,
Repeat the question.
what's my take on suffering now that I've had these experiences? Yeah, I don't know what to say about that. Suffering is hard, and I don't really wish on anybody any of the suffering that I've been through, and I don't wish on myself any more suffering, really. But what suffering has done is it just breaks your heart open and open and open. And
Maybe this would be an alternative to have to go through the suffering over and over.
yeah, some people say that there's a way to open your heart that doesn't have to come by so much suffering. For me, it had to come through a lot of suffering, but there's one of the songs this New Leaf Collective did that said, "My heart cannot break enough to open this well of," something like to open this well of love inside, or to give me access to this well of love inside. So I would say that it gives people access to their love, to their connection with others, to authenticity, because suffering comes from pretense. It comes from inauthenticity. It comes from, yeah. So I guess that's my perspective on suffering. Yeah.
So,
Audrey, question?
Yeah, from all those different journeys that you went on, I know you were in clown school, math,
Yeah, art math, yeah.
process.
Yeah.
There was something that brought you to that understanding and realization of the suffering and what it was.
Uh-huh.
What process was that? And
Well, I understood what suffering was in that experience I described about the return of the childhood trauma memories and the intense psychic pain and so forth. And I've after the loss of the awakening, I went through 10 years of really severe depression. That was a lot of suffering. And then after the depression lifted, there was another 10 years of intense anxiety. That was a lot of suffering. Are you asking how I know about suffering, or?
But there was one point at which you just knew you suffered, and then there seemed to be, I know why.
Oh, I know why I suffered. Well, it's still, my learnings are all still in progress. I don't know everything, but those answers come to me like, what's come to me is there have been gifts that have been so big that have come to me that they might be equal to the suffering. I don't know, but I've had this big heart opening, and then also experiences in my life that were really profound blessings, my whole guiding career, and helping to raise Julia, who you know, and so yeah, I'm still, and I still have, I have remnants of trauma in my body, still strong gut triggering and energetic stuff that goes on, and difficulty sleeping. And so every morning that I get up and I feel this hard energetic hit, I've got to deal with suffering again, and deal with, how do I work with this? How do I work with pain? I alternate, but sometimes I'm in a very, I feel like I'm right back in my awakening again, in the space of that profound sense of wellness, and then sometimes I feel like I'm really in the trenches working with the pain and the suffering again. So it's been a bumpy road for me. It goes back and forth. Yeah. Does that answer your question? Yeah. 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 But it, you know, now there's these profound states of well-being that I go into, and for many, many years it was just only ever difficult. So I know something's gotten better in that time.
And so after your training in the fall,
Uh-huh.
how long will that take? Weeks, and will you be there?
Well, I may be, it's about an 8-month training, and I may be going down there. There's an option that I can do a lot of it by distance, and I can take trips down there once a month. And we'll have to just see how rich I feel to fly down there once a month. The training, I think, is in Portland area. Yeah. Yeah.
I think part of the cycle of feeling really great well-being.
I just put it right here.
into suffering is because it's in a spiral. Like we're never quite.
Yeah.
Not linear for sure.
It could be spiral.
And that's something that I've discovered that will go away. I can go back to the well-being.
Uh-huh. Yeah.
So I don't get afraid or feel like I'm doing something wrong.
Yeah, that's great.
You know,
that's great.
Something is wrong.
Right.
I say, just chill.
Yeah.
And look toward the well-being.
Yeah.
It will come back.
Yeah. And just learn to work with the suffering in a kind way. I did I'm always trying to explore this deeper. I did anybody familiar with focusing by Eugene Gendlin? I did a focusing workshop yesterday that was called Befriending Pain. And the woman who presented said, you know, bring to mind sometime when somebody was unfriendly or inconsiderate to you, and feel that in your body, feel what that felt like. And then after a pause, then bring to a mind a time when somebody was very friendly to you, very welcoming, very considerate, and feel that in your body. And with which do you want to meet your own pain? Isn't that great? Yeah. With that friendliness, with that openness, or with that rejection, and so forth. And so, yeah. I can see we're probably at the end of our time, and I'm happy to hang out afterwards if anybody has any other questions and chat a little bit.